It's always great to meet a rocket scientist who has a background in theatre, because it's unusual, and it's kind of the general theme of the night has been wonderful that way, I think, between philosophy and physics, etc.
And this is the exact opposite of Emma, where I did theatre and then, to the delight of my parents, moved to science.
You need to swap. But tell us a little bit about the journey, because I do think it is interesting to hear the opposite journey to Emma in a way.
So I was doing theatre in France. We have a culture of art and science, of street art, and then I realized after 10 years that I was not talented enough to make a living, and I don't like money necessarily, but I like paying my rent, and so that's where I was like, okay, we need to find something that I can actually do, and science was there. But in the back of my mind, I always had this issue of like, oh, what if I had gone there? And I think this artist in residence program is the what if. It's the answer to the what if of what if we bring an artist that for a year-long residency in our quantum labs at Yale, where they will have full access to the lab. They will talk to all the students. They will talk to, they will attend our colloquial or seminars or group meetings, and really have them take apart the technology and then spend time in the lab and understand how things works. And then we want to create an artwork, and I use artwork in a very meaningful, like in a very large way. It doesn't, like I don't want to constrain the artist that comes in, and so it could be visual art, it could be some writing, it could be some music, it could be some, like a lot of things, and you actually see a bunch of these things in the background rotating, and the idea is to try to help the public have, to go back to the, what do I tell them? Well, I can say like, oh, we're doing this cool light show on the side of a building using the soundtrack of quantum computers. We developed this live performance where musicians and grad students in quantum labs have used quantum computers, the type of superconductive qubits, to create a half-an-hour track of electronic music. And then you come to that and you understand, it's like, oh, that's fun. And then you can talk to them about how in the frequency that they hear, you can see actually the jump of the qubit in different level of states. And you can hear that. And so it gives them a little thing that helps them next time they go to a classroom, or next time they have a more difficult talk about quantum physics, they can grasp to that. It's like, oh, is that the thing that had two states and that could hear? And I don't want to create the illusion that it's going to solve quantum physics. Is just a tool to do outreach and to do education and to help them and maybe encourage the younger generation. And we were talking about the fact that we need to teach quantum physics early on, and that might be a way to do it.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that actually. When you're talking about outreach, who are you trying to reach? Is it young, third level, fourth level students, or are you actually hoping to get people who are still in school to actually think about this?
So my main target audience was the first year students at university, because we want to make them take STEM 101, Quantum 101, or like these kind of things. And I was like, okay, how can we bring this new generation of students here? So the age is about 18 to 21, and then the general public. But there's a lot of activities with younger students, but I haven't run into this because I'm more interested in creating fine art more than museum of science art, because I want the artists to be happy and that to be part of their practice, and to be like, this is actually meaningful in an art form more than just an explanation of how. And I think if you go for too young of a target audience, you have to dumb down a little bit the artwork.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I mean, tell me about, just for people who don't know, the Artists in Residence program, it's been going for a while. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about its success and the kind of artists that have gone through?
So it started in 2017. We took, this is some of the photo of the institute, and we took over a renovated space that had this blank wall with like two spotlights on the blank wall. And I was like, oh, that was clearly meant for an artwork or a visual or something. And so I started talking around to people at the School of Art at Yale and the New Haven local artists to say like, hey, can we have some quantum-inspired, quantum-themed artwork? And we worked with one artist from New Haven, Martha Lewis, who's a visual artist and also is very interested in the history of science and how humans create knowledge, and worked on the structure with paper. And this is actually the series that like sort of started the whole thing. It's a series we started by a talk about 2 topics in science and humanities, and so we had art and science, we had physics and dance, we had mathematics and crochet, and all this thing really sparked this, oh, there's demand for art and science, and there's also a big audience, and I think the audience is more responsive to that. And so Martha started, we had now a mural of her artwork in the space that I was mentioning, and that really was she had a really difficult job, because not only she had to come in, learn about quantum physics, but had to convince all the physicists, why not my plots? Why not my certain things? And so that was really the challenge. And then slowly over time, by doing small installation, the students were excited to talk to her and to explain more about their work. And then they started collaborating. And then we had the installation and a talk, part of the Festival of Arts and Idea of New Haven, talking about the quantum arts, and quantum physics and the humanities. And this really sparked interest, and many departments at Yale and in other universities were like, oh, we could do that too. It really sparked, and I think it was really an uphill battle, which is pretty surprising coming from Yale, which is a very liberal art school, and they love to say that we talked about interdisciplinary and art and science, and then when you actually want to do it, well, not the easiest thing to do. But I think you have to start small, and I think if you want to create that kind of project, start with a talk, start with a conversation, or an evening like this one, and like hosted by your university, and then you slowly bring them back again. I was like, hey, what if we do something else? And then that's really how you roll, because you need to build trust and to all the different agents, and then from there you can pretty much go wherever you want, because we started by just a visual. There was a mural that was put on vinyl, because one of the regulations was like, please do not destroy the wall. And I was like, what about the artwork? They're like, no, we don't care. It need to be removable. And now we actually pressed an album, made a live performance, had a museum show talking about the history of superconductive qubits from 1988 to the 2000, showing all of this, had drawings, and really you can go as far as you want. But yeah, it takes some time. But I think that helped.
Can I ask, does everybody know what a qubit is? Oh, good. Okay, it just suddenly struck me. I do happen to know, but
so qubit is the portmanteau word of quantum bits. It's basically the version of a transistor in classical computers. You can see that as a system that would be a switch that can go from 0 to 1. And then you just flip your switch, and that's how you can code binary in classical computers. A qubit is the quantum version of that. So it could be either an atom that you trap, and then you measure the level of excitation of the electron that goes around, or it could be an artificial atoms, which is what we call superconductive qubits, which is a technology that mimic what an atom will do, but on a circuit board. So that technology is much easier to run because we don't have to trap atoms that are very tiny, and if you sneeze next to it, well, your atom is gone. And so that's we drew from the technology that we know from making circuit boards for classical computers to build this. The main disadvantage of that technology is that we need to cool down the fridge, like cool down the system to almost absolute zero. And so that's minus 273 degrees. And to give you a scale, because we don't really, I know it's cold today, but it's not that cold. No. If you go very, very, very far away in space, it's actually warmer there than inside the quantum computers. By a few degrees, but yeah, still.
That's a really nice segue actually to what I want to ask you about next, and that is, for many years, I think a lot of us probably in this room have been talking about the marriage of technology and, what you might call now traditional technology and the arts. What are the challenges and the opportunities with quantum and the arts? You just touched on one of the challenges there, which may be accessibility to quantum computers, for example.
So the first thing is the challenge of access. Because the technology is brand new, it's very, very expensive. There's a lot of money being pulled by government agencies all over the world for military applications. And so usually you don't want artists that are seen as free spirits and things to mingle in this very serious operation. And so that's one of the challenge. That's why we got lucky at Yale. We have a ton of students working on this. We have the largest academic group with superconductive qubits and superconductive devices. So I managed to convince our director, like, hey, we have this one. Can we use it for like half an hour? And then it was like, well, it's actually half a day. And then, it's for an evening of presentation. And so like you sort of build. And so I think access is the issue for hardware. There's more and more companies that put quantum devices online on the cloud, so artists could use. For example, IBM has their cloud. I think a couple of startups also give access to people. And I think if you, as artists and students, if you email them, you can ask for tokens and they will gladly give you access to the machines. So you could do that. The issue with this, I see, is that it might be a bit restrictive for the artists because they need to know how to code, and then you only have access to one narrow, like, this is how we do it, this is how you simulate the code, and I don't think it would be interesting enough. I think what you might end up doing is like playing random notes on a piano, but the quantum computer is doing it, and I think that might be the limiting factor for this platform, but over time, I think as technology grew and matured, it's going to, of course, cost less and less money. And so that would be maybe the easiest thing. Yeah,
okay. And I suppose, and they're there on the wall, and people will have seen them, and there's some fascinating looking projects there. Will you take us through some of the projects and literally how they work and what you've done in recent years, even from the from the Yale Artists in Residence, please?
So I think maybe since tomorrow the Goethe-Institut London is hosting an event on quantum music. Maybe I can talk about the one by Spencer Topo on quantum sounds. So he was a second artist in residence. He was a composer, and he was using scientific instrument to make music. So he was using the opposite of what they're supposed to do, and then to try to make new sounds. And so he came in, gave a talk about his practice, and talked about notes, frequency, tones, and all these things. And the quantum scientists in the room really light up. It's like, oh, this is the same words we use. This is like, we can communicate, we have the same vocabulary. We don't use them for the same thing, but we can, we have a common ground, a common language. And so two grad students work with him on a piece called Quantum Sounds that I produced. And the idea was to try to send to the computer direction to perform measurements. And I have to talk about measurement in quantum system. That's going to be a little bit tricky, but it's very important for this. So we talked earlier in the previous conversation that if nothing in your quantum system, nothing exists until you ask what it is. And often asking the question, if you say for example, if you ask for the orientation of a qubit, so up will be 1, down will be 0, or something like this. If you ask, by any chance, could it be sideways? Just the fact of hinting that it may be sideways will force the qubit will be like, yes, it's sideways. It was not before. It might not be exactly what you wanted. You want it up or down, but just hinting at the fact that it might be sideways, the system will give you what you ask, like a random version of what you ask. And so we try to not ask any question on our systems. The students make really a strong effort of not asking direct measurements and asking maybe if your entangled friends would happen to be on that position, do you think you will agree that that's the qubit? So that's how we do it. And the musicians decided to use that as a nub on a physical synthesizer. So using all our devices, that way we'll be like, no, we're gonna ask actually what it is, and we're gonna force the measurement to be the sound we want it to be. And so by trying to use sonification techniques to make the quantum signal audible, and I'm looking at Emma there because I have to defend my claim. We actually have a signal that you can actually listen to, so it's not a conversion. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, are we listening to white noise? Like if you plug your headphones to any system, you have something, but like, are you actually listening to quantum system or not? And so a lot of work has been done on this. And then we, for performance, the scientists were sending requests to the quantum computers over the internet, sending big batch of data, and the data were sent back to the computers, slowed down to an audible frequency, and then the Spencer Topol and the two scientists, Kyle Soniak and Luc Burkhart, were playing and composing a piece around this. And then the interesting thing about this is that to do science outreach, I ended up creating with them a very niche experimental music album that that the general public probably doesn't like. So I understand the irony of trying to outreach to the biggest known to end up in a very niche part. But one thing that's very interesting in this project, and I think this is the most important thing that how we can sell art and science, is that from that album that we released, you can actually see the chip on the vinyl, which is like quite interesting. That's one of the quantum chips. So what you don't see here is in the side is actually what makes the measurement. It's super tiny, you don't see it, it's on a piece of sapphire. And then what happened is that the rest of the machine is just to cool down the system. And so we created this, and then out of the artwork, we were asked to write a scientific review, a peer review article about how we use the sonification technique to do that. And so we went from science to art to science again, and then tomorrow we'll talk about that in London, about how we did all in more detail. And so that's the interesting thing, is that maybe if we didn't have artists in our labs, we wouldn't have had that new piece of science, of like how we can use sonification technique to understand a little bit more the quantum system.
I love that, and I love that idea that it could continue to go around.
It's
Why not?
It's
yeah.